Coral reefs are beautiful, like you. But did you know that they're actually animals, not plants? They eat plankton and other microscopic bits of stuff. Coral reefs also shelter larger fish and other sea creatures.
Thanks to one of our favorite educational game companies, we have another way to explore the complex relationships between these tropical sea creatures. It's a card game!
This is a snap review for Ecosystem Coral Reef.
Ecosystem Coral Reef is a card game for up to 6 players, designed by Matt Simpson and adapted by Steve Schlepphorst, and it's published by Genius Games.
Takes 15 to 20 minutes to play, and it's best for ages 8+ since there's a little bit of reading involved, and players need to keep their cards secret.
Let's talk about the art. The box cover is a pretty good hint to what's inside this game. Every animal in the game is represented except maybe the whale and the plankton.
The illustrations by Mesa Schumacher are lifelike and interesting, except the plankton.
I don't think you can make plankton look interesting.
I don't think so. All 11 designs are perfectly clear, and you'll never be mistaking one type for another during play.
So let's talk about how to play.
Sure. So Ecosystem Coral Reef is a sequel to 2019's Ecosystem, which is a card drafting and placement game.
A game is 2 rounds. At the beginning of each round, every player gets 10 cards.
Every player will choose a card from their hand simultaneously, then put it into their own grid adjacent to at least one other card. When everyone has placed, they pass their remaining cards clockwise in the first round and then counterclockwise in the second round.
We've seen this before.
Yeah.
At the end of the game, you'll have 20 cards in a 4x5 grid, and it'll be time to score. Hope you place those cards in a way that works for you.
Each of the 11 card types scores in a different way. Coral only scores if it's on the bottom row. Clownfish want to be adjacent to plankton and coral, and whales score for every krill card in the entire ecosystem. Most of the cards also fit into a food web category, either producer or prey or predator. Players score each group separately, then they take the lowest of those 3 scores and add it again as a food web bonus, showing how all of these creatures live in balance. So I was really excited when I saw the first Ecosystem game. Like many Genius games, it takes a scientific concept and it marries it with game mechanics to create something that's both educational and truly fun to play.
What?
I know, right?
It reminded me of What in the Wild, which is another game we've reviewed, but this one has fewer species represented, which should make the choices easier.
On the other hand, we have played some drafting games from Genius that weren't great, so we were hoping that Ecosystem would be better.
Our big concern was not only would it be fun, but would that fun be married in the gameplay with something that teaches?
Something meaningful, specifically.
Yeah.
So, Anitra, let's talk about what surprised us about Ecosystem.
Well, I'm going to start with a negative. The cards are really small. I know they did this to make it possible to build a 4x5 grid without taking over the table, which is great, but there are 130 cards. This is only about 60 of them. That makes it very hard to shuffle. We found out just how much of a problem that can be in our first game, where Coral, in the name of the game, never showed up at all.
It's also hard to remember how the various cards score. Everyone gets a player aid, which is actually very helpful, but I do wish there was some kind of symbology on the cards themselves beyond just the predator, prey, and producer symbols.
But now some positives. Card drafting games like this don't usually work well at fewer than 3 players. But the rules for Ecosystem Coral Reef include adaptations for 2 players and for solo, and both of them work quite well.
2-player drafting uses a third hand of cards for like a neutral player who is included in the drafting rotation and randomly discards 1 card each turn. In some games this might not work, but in Ecosystem it was perfect. Each player passes to the neutral player for half the game, and you never really know exactly which cards you're going to get a chance to see again. I'm also not really shy about how much I don't like automatas, but this one is very simple and it provides a buffer between the players that just works super well.
Solo mode ditches the drafting entirely, which is great. It focuses instead on building the grid. You're going to build 2 grids simultaneously, one for yourself and one for Mocha, a fake player with set rules for adding to their grid. Your goal is to beat Mocha by a wide margin, like at least 50 points, and better if you can do it by like 70 points.
This is another thing I really liked. In the solo game, you're almost playing 2 games at the same time, one of them to score well, and one of them to score poorly. So Anitra, do we recommend Ecosystem Coral Reef?
The box here suggests that Ecosystem Coral Reef is for ages 8 and up. I'd say that's about right, because in theory reading isn't required to play, but there's a lot of scoring conditions that you need to keep straight.
I think the game is really good for reinforcing marine biology and the concept of the food web, and you'll have fun while you're playing it. I recommend this game for parents and teachers ready to play along with kids. If you're working through a module like this in your science class, or your kids are in their science class, it's a good one to break out. Plus, it's small and relatively inexpensive.
Hey!
So, Anitra, what are we going to rate Ecosystem Coral Reef?
I think we're going to rate it 3.5 fish out of 5.
And that's Ecosystem Coral Reef
In a snap.
Did you know that the Family Gamers has a weekly podcast? Oh, and over 500 reviews on our website. Check it out at thefamilygamers.com.
Half a fish?
Maybe the shark got it.
Ooh. Oh.